The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Kensington Palace, casting long shadows across the polished floors where Prince William sat in his study, staring at the letter that had arrived just hours before. His hands trembled slightly as he read the words again, each sentence hitting him like a physical blow. The letter was from Sarah Mitchell, a single mother from Manchester whose 8-year-old daughter Emma had been battling leukemia for the past 2 years. Sarah's handwriting was shaky, betraying the emotional state she must have been in when she wrote it. She explained how Emma had always dreamed of meeting a real princess, how during her darkest moments in the hospital, she would clutch a photograph of Kate and whisper prayers that someday she might see her in person. But now the doctors had given Emma just weeks to live. Sarah wasn't asking for a miracle cure. She knew that was impossible. She was simply asking if there was any way, any chance at all, that her daughter might meet the woman who had given her hope during the most difficult period of her young life. William set the letter down and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where he and Harry used to play as children. The memory of their own mother, Princess Diana, came flooding back. He could almost hear her voice, the way she used to talk about using their position to bring comfort to those who needed it most. Diana had always said that being royal wasn't about the titles or the ceremonies. It was about being a bridge between hope and despair for ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. When Kate entered the study 20 minutes later, she found her husband still standing by the window, lost in thought. She immediately noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself when something was weighing heavily on his mind. After nearly 15 years together, she could read his moods like a familiar book. She approached quietly, placing a gentle hand on his arm. William turned to face her, his blue eyes reflecting a mixture of sadness and determination. Without saying a word, he handed her the letter. Kate read it slowly, her expression growing more solemn with each paragraph. When she finished, she looked up at her husband, and he could see that she was thinking exactly what he was thinking. They didn't need to discuss it. Some decisions made themselves. The next few hours were a whirlwind of quiet activity. William contacted his private secretary, explaining that they needed to arrange an immediate visit to Manchester Children's Hospital. It couldn't be an official royal visit with all the usual protocols and media attention. This needed to be different, something more personal and intimate. The palace staff, accustomed to unusual requests from the royal couple, began making discreet arrangements. Meanwhile, Kate retreated to her private sitting room and began going through her wardrobe, not for anything glamorous or formal, but for something that would be appropriate for a sick child who was fighting for her life. She selected a simple blue dress, one that Emma might find pretty, but not overwhelming. She also gathered some small gifts, carefully chosen items that might bring comfort to a little girl who had been through so much. Dr. James Harrison, the head of pediatric oncology at Manchester Children's Hospital, received a phone call at 3 in the afternoon. When his secretary told him that Kensington Palace was on the line, he assumed it was some kind of mistake. But as he listened to the careful, measured voice of William's private secretary explaining the situation, he realized this was very real. The Prince and Princess of Wales wanted to visit Emma Mitchell, and they wanted to do it as soon as possible, with minimal fuss and maximum privacy. Dr. Harrison had been treating Emma for 18 months, watching this brave little girl fight a battle that no child should ever have to face. He had seen her mother, Sarah, sleeping in uncomfortable hospital chairs night after night, never leaving her daughter's side. He had witnessed Emma's decline over the past few weeks, seen the light slowly dimming in her eyes. If there was anything at all that might bring some joy to her remaining days, he was going to make it happen. The doctor immediately called Sarah, who was in Emma's room reading her a story. Sarah's phone rang 3 times before she answered, her voice tired and strained. When Dr. Harrison explained what was happening, Sarah initially thought he was playing some kind of cruel joke. The idea that the Prince and Princess of Wales would want to visit her daughter seemed impossible, too good to be true. Emma was dozing when her mother hung up the phone, her small face pale against the white hospital pillows. The chemotherapy had taken her hair months ago, but She wore a colorful headband that Kate had been photographed wearing to a charity event. It was one of Emma's most prized possessions, something that made her feel connected to the princess she admired so much. Sarah gently shook her daughter awake. Emma's eyes fluttered open, and she smiled weakly at her mother. Sarah took a deep breath, not sure how to explain what was about to happen. She decided to keep it simple, not wanting to overwhelm her already fragile daughter. "Emma, sweetheart," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Harrison just called. Some very special visitors are coming to see you today. People who have heard about how brave you've been and want to meet you." Emma's eyes brightened slightly, though she was clearly struggling to stay alert. The medication made her drowsy, but she fought against it when something important was happening. "Who's coming, Mummy?" she asked, her voice hoarse from the treatments. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then decided to tell her the truth. "Princess Catherine is coming to see you, Emma. And Prince William, too. They read the letter I wrote to them about how much you love Princess Catherine, and they want to meet you." For a moment, Emma just stared at her mother, processing the information. Then, slowly, her face transformed. Despite her illness, despite the pain and fatigue that had become her constant companions, pure joy spread across her features. It was the first time Sarah had seen her daughter truly smile in weeks. "Really, Mummy? Really, truly?" Emma whispered, her small hand gripping her mother's tightly. "Really, truly," Sarah confirmed, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter's reaction. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of preparation. The hospital staff worked quietly and efficiently to ensure that everything would be perfect for the royal visit. They didn't want to create a circus atmosphere that might overwhelm Emma, but they also wanted to show proper respect for their distinguished visitors. Dr. Harrison made it clear to everyone involved that this was about Emma, not about them, and that the focus should remain on bringing comfort to a sick child. Emma insisted on getting dressed for the visit, even though it exhausted her. With Sarah's help, she put on her favorite dress, a pink one with small flowers that she had worn to her cousin's birthday party before she got sick. She carefully adjusted her colorful headband, making sure it looked perfect. Despite her illness, she wanted to look her best for the princess. As the afternoon wore on, news of the impending visit began to spread quietly through the hospital. The staff members who would be present were sworn to secrecy, but word has a way of traveling in close-knit communities. Soon, other families in the pediatric ward had heard whispers about what was happening. Parents who had been watching their own children fight similar battles felt a surge of hope and excitement, not just for Emma, but for all of them. If the royal family cared enough to visit one sick child, maybe there was more compassion in the world than they had dared to believe. Outside the hospital, a small crowd began to gather as word spread through social media. Someone had recognized the unmarked cars that had arrived earlier, cars that looked suspiciously like those used by the royal protection officers. Local news crews started arriving, though they were kept at a distance by hospital security. This wasn't meant to be a public spectacle, but in today's connected world, complete secrecy was nearly impossible. William and Kate arrived at the hospital at 5:30 in the evening, entering through a side entrance to avoid the growing crowd out front. They had changed from their earlier formal attire into more casual clothing, wanting to appear as approachable as possible. Kate carried a small bag containing the gifts she had selected, while William held a bouquet of flowers that they had picked from their own garden at Kensington Palace. Dr. Harrison met them at the entrance, briefing them quickly on Emma's condition and what they might expect. He explained that she was very weak, that the cancer had progressed significantly in recent weeks, and that she tired easily. But he also told them about her spirit, about how she had fought this disease with a courage that had inspired everyone who met her. As they walked through the hospital corridors, other patients and families caught glimpses of the royal couple. Some recognized them immediately. Others weren't sure what they were seeing. But there was something about the quiet dignity with which William and Kate moved through the building, the genuine concern evident on their faces, that created a ripple of emotion throughout the ward. When they reached Emma's room, Dr. Harrison knocked gently on the door before opening it slowly. Sarah stood up immediately, her heart pounding with nervousness and excitement. She had never imagined that she would find herself in this situation, face to face with two of the most famous people in the world, but here they were, and they had come because of her daughter. Emma was sitting up in her hospital bed, her eyes wide with anticipation and wonder, when Kate entered the room, followed by William. The little girl's face lit up with a joy that seemed to transform her entirely. For a moment, the illness, the pain, the fear, all of it seemed to fade away, leaving only an 8-year-old girl meeting her hero. Kate approached the bed slowly, her own eyes glistening with tears as she saw how small and fragile Emma looked. But she also saw the strength in those young eyes, the determination that had carried this child through 2 years of fighting a disease that would have broken many adults. Kate sat down in the chair beside Emma's bed, bringing herself to the little girl's eye level. "Hello, Emma," Kate said softly, her voice warm and gentle. "I'm Catherine, but you can call me Kate if you'd like. I've heard so many wonderful things about how brave you are." Emma couldn't speak for a moment, overwhelmed by the reality of meeting someone she had dreamed about for so long. Finally, she managed to whisper, "You're even more beautiful than in the pictures, Princess Kate." Kate smiled, reaching out to gently touch Emma's hand. "And you are absolutely beautiful too, Emma. I love your headband. Is that one like mine?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, her excitement giving her more energy than she had shown in days. "Mummy bought it for me after she saw you wearing one at the charity thing. I wear it every day because it makes me feel brave like you." William stepped forward then, pulling up another chair. Despite his own royal upbringing, despite all the formal training and protocol that had shaped his life, he found himself deeply moved by this simple, honest interaction between his wife and this courageous child. He had seen Kate in many situations over the years, but watching her connect so naturally with Emma reminded him why he had fallen in love with her in the first place. The conversation that followed was magical in its simplicity. Kate asked Emma about her favorite books, her friends at school, her dreams for the future. Emma, energized by the presence of her hero, talked more than she had in weeks. She told Kate about the horses she wanted to ride when she got better, about the dress she wanted to wear to her next birthday party, about the letter she had written to Father Christmas asking not for toys, but for more time. William joined in the conversation, sharing stories about his own childhood, about the times he had been scared or worried, and how he had learned to be brave. He told Emma about his mother, Princess Diana, and how she had taught him that true courage wasn't about not being afraid, but about doing what needed to be done despite the fear. As the visit continued, something remarkable was happening throughout the hospital. Word of the royal visit had spread to every floor, every ward. Patients who were strong enough were wheeling themselves or walking slowly toward the pediatric wing, hoping for just a glimpse of William and Kate. Families who had been dealing with their own medical crises found themselves united in this moment of wonder and hope. The nursing staff, who saw heartbreak and suffering every day, found themselves wiping away tears as they watched the interaction in Emma's room through the partly open door. There was something profoundly moving about seeing these symbols of privilege and power sitting beside a sick child's bed, not as royalty performing a duty, but as human beings sharing in a moment of pure connection. Outside the hospital, the crowd had grown larger, but it remained respectful and quiet. People held signs expressing support for Emma and gratitude to William and Kate for their compassion. Local residents brought flowers and cards, creating an impromptu memorial of hope and love. News crews from around the world were arriving, but they too seemed to understand that this was something special, something that transcended their usual pursuit of dramatic headlines. As the visit continued into its second hour, Emma began to tire, but she fought against the exhaustion, not wanting this magical moment to end. Kate noticed the little girl's drooping eyelids and gently suggested that perhaps Emma should rest. But Emma shook her head stubbornly, determined to stay awake for every precious moment with her heroes. It was then that Kate made a decision that would be remembered for years to come, a gesture so simple yet so profound that it would touch the hearts of people around the world. She asked Emma if she would like to take a nap, and when the little girl reluctantly nodded, Kate did something extraordinary. She kicked off her shoes, carefully climbed onto the narrow hospital bed beside Emma, and gently pulled the small girl into her arms. Emma's eyes widened with wonder and delight as she found herself cuddled against the Princess of Wales, feeling the warmth and comfort of a mother's embrace from someone she had only dreamed of meeting. Kate began to hum softly, a lullaby that her own mother had sung to her as a child, and gradually Emma's breathing became deeper and more regular. William watched this scene unfold with his own eyes filled with tears. He saw his wife, the future Queen of England, holding a dying child with all the tenderness and love of any mother comforting her own daughter. He saw Emma's face, peaceful for the first time in weeks, finally able to rest in the arms of her hero. And he knew that he was witnessing something that would change them all forever. The room fell silent except for Kate's gentle humming and Emma's quiet breathing. Sarah sat in her chair, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the kindness and compassion being shown to her daughter. Dr. Harrison stood in the doorway, having seen many remarkable things in his years as a pediatric oncologist, but nothing quite like this. As Emma drifted off to sleep in Kate's arms, the princess continued to hold her, making no move to leave or shift to a more comfortable position. She understood that this might be one of the last times Emma would feel truly safe and loved, and she was determined to give the little girl this gift of peace and comfort. Outside Emma's room, the hospital had become a place of pilgrimage. Families from other wards had gathered in the hallways, not seeking attention or trying to intrude, but simply wanting to be part of this moment of human connection and compassion. Nurses and doctors found themselves working more quietly, more gently, as if Emma's room had become a sacred space that deserved their respect and reverence. When Emma finally stirred from her peaceful sleep an hour later, she found herself still nestled in Kate's arms. For a moment, she thought she might be dreaming, but the warmth and gentle breathing of the princess beside her confirmed that this magical moment was real. Kate had remained perfectly still during the entire time, not wanting to disturb the child's rest, even though her arm had grown numb from maintaining the same position. Emma looked up at Kate with eyes that seemed older than her 8 years, eyes that had seen too much pain, but still sparkled with wonder. "Thank you for staying with me," she whispered, her small voice filled with gratitude that seemed too profound for such a young child. Kate smiled down at her, brushing a gentle hand across Emma's forehead. "Thank you for letting me stay," she replied. "It's been the most peaceful hour I've had in a very long time." William, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, moved his chair closer to the bed. During the past hour, he had watched his wife demonstrate the kind of compassion and grace that made him proud to call her his partner in life and in their royal duties. He had also spent time talking quietly with Sarah, learning more about their family's journey through Emma's illness. Sarah had told him about the sleepless nights, the financial struggles that came with having a sick child, the way their entire world had narrowed down to hospital rooms and treatment schedules. She spoke of Emma's courage during painful procedures, how the little girl would comfort other children in the ward who were scared, how she had never once asked, "Why me?" but instead seemed determined to make the most of whatever time she had left. As Emma became more alert, Kate carefully helped her sit up while remaining close beside her on the bed. The natural, easy intimacy of the moment struck everyone in the room. This wasn't a formal royal visit with handshakes and polite conversation. This was something much more personal and profound, a connection between human beings that transcended titles and social positions. Emma reached into the drawer of her bedside table and pulled out a small, handmade card. Her hands shook slightly from weakness, but her determination was clear as she offered it to Kate. The card had been decorated with drawings of horses and flowers, colored with the unsteady hand of a sick child, but filled with love and hope. "I made this for you," Emma said shyly. "I wasn't sure I'd ever get to give it to you, but Mummy said I should always be ready for miracles. Kate accepted the card with the same reverence she might show for a priceless piece of art. She opened it carefully and read the words inside, written in Emma's childish handwriting. Dear Princess Kate, thank you for being brave and beautiful and kind. You make me want to be brave, too. I hope we can be friends. Love, Emma. The simple, honest words hit Kate harder than any state dinner speech or formal address ever had. She felt tears welling up in her eyes as she looked at this little girl who was facing the ultimate challenge with such grace and generosity of spirit. Kate had received thousands of letters and gifts throughout her years as a royal, but none had moved her quite like this homemade card from a dying child. Emma, this is the most beautiful card I've ever received, Kate said, her voice thick with emotion. And I would be honored to be your friend. In fact, I have something for you too. Kate reached into her bag and pulled out a small, wrapped package. Inside was a silver bracelet with a small horse charm, similar to one that Kate often wore herself. But this wasn't just any piece of jewelry. Kate had specifically chosen it from her own collection, something that had personal meaning to her, because she wanted Emma to have something truly special. As Kate fastened the bracelet around Emma's thin wrist, the little girl's face lit up with joy. She held up her arm to admire the bracelet, turning it so the horse charm caught the light. For Emma, this wasn't just a gift from a famous person. It was a tangible connection to someone who had become her hero and inspiration. William, meanwhile, had been having an equally meaningful conversation with Sarah. The prince had learned about the practical challenges that families face when dealing with childhood cancer. Sarah had told him about the long drives to the hospital, the time off work that had cost her job, the struggle to maintain normalcy for Emma while dealing with an abnormal situation. What struck William most was Sarah's strength and dignity in the face of unimaginable circumstances. She had never complained or asked for pity. Instead, she had focused entirely on making Emma's journey as positive as possible. She had decorated Emma's hospital room with pictures and flowers, had read to her daughter every night, had celebrated every small victory and milestone with the same enthusiasm as if Emma had won an Olympic medal. Dr. Harrison, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, stepped into the room as the visit continued. He had known this family for many months, had watched them face devastating news with courage and grace, had seen them support other families going through similar struggles. He also knew that Emma's time was limited, that the cancer was progressing faster than they had hoped. But watching Emma now, seeing the energy and joy that had returned to her face during this visit, Dr. Harrison was reminded why he had chosen pediatric oncology despite of heartbreaks. It was moments like this when hope and love could triumph over despair, even temporarily, that made all the difficult days worthwhile. As the conversation in Emma's room continued, something remarkable was happening throughout the rest of the hospital. News of the royal visit had spread to every department, and staff members were finding creative ways to catch a glimpse of William and Kate without disturbing the privacy of their visit with Emma. In the children's ward, other young patients were pressing their faces to windows and doorways, hoping to see a real prince and princess. Parents who had been maintaining bedside vigils for their own sick children found themselves smiling for the first time in weeks, inspired by the compassion being shown to one of their fellow families. The teenage cancer ward had gathered in their common room, where several patients had started an impromptu discussion about courage and hope. Many of these young people were fighting their own battles with various forms of cancer, and seeing Emma receive this special recognition for her bravery made them all feel a little more hopeful about their own situations. Outside the hospital, the crowd had grown to several hundred people, but it remained remarkably peaceful and respectful. Local residents had begun bringing flowers, cards, and small gifts, creating an impromptu shrine of support and love. Television news crews from around the world were broadcasting live from the scene, but even the usually aggressive media presence seemed subdued by the gravity and beauty of what was taking place. Social media had exploded with messages of support for Emma and praise for William and Kate's compassion. The hashtag Emma's Courage was trending worldwide, with people sharing their own stories of battling illness, losing loved ones, or finding hope in dark times. What had begun as a private visit to comfort one sick child had somehow become a global moment of reflection on courage, compassion, and the power of human connection. Back in Emma's room, the conversation had turned to dreams and aspirations. Despite her illness, Emma still had plans for the future, still believed in possibilities that might seem unrealistic given her prognosis. She told Kate about wanting to become a veterinarian someday, about her plans to have horses, and help other sick children feel better. Kate listened to these dreams with complete attention and respect, never once suggesting that they might be unrealistic or impossible. Instead, she encouraged Emma to hold on her hopes, to keep believing in the future, to continue being an inspiration to everyone around her. William, meanwhile, had been deeply moved by his conversation with Sarah about the broader challenges facing families dealing with childhood cancer. He learned about the inadequate support systems, the financial burdens that often accompanied medical treatment, the isolation that many families experienced when their children became seriously ill. As someone who had dedicated much of his royal work to charitable causes, William saw an opportunity to make a real difference. He began discussing with Sarah the possibility of establishing new support programs for families like theirs, practical initiatives that could help other parents navigate the complex medical and emotional challenges of childhood cancer. The time spent in Emma's room stretched into its third hour, with no one seeming eager to end this extraordinary encounter. Emma was more animated and energetic than she had been in weeks, drawing strength from the presence of her heroes. Kate and William seemed equally energized by the experience, reminded of why their positions of privilege came with opportunities to make real differences in people's lives. Dr. Harrison eventually approached the bed to check on Emma, monitoring her vital signs and making sure that the excitement wasn't too taxing for her fragile condition. What he found surprised him. Emma's heart rate was more stable than it had been in days, her breathing was easier, and she seemed to have more color in her cheeks than she had shown recently. The doctor had seen this phenomenon before, had witnessed how positive emotions and experiences could sometimes provide temporary improvements in patient conditions. The medical community had a name for it, but Dr. Harrison preferred to think of it as the power of love and hope working their own kind of healing magic. As the visit continued, Kate made another decision that would become part of the lasting legacy of this day. She asked Emma if she would like to record a special message together, something that could be shared with other children who are fighting similar battles. Emma's eyes lit up at the suggestion, and she eagerly agreed. Using William's phone, they recorded a simple video of Emma and Kate sitting together on the hospital bed. Emma spoke directly to the camera, her young voice filled with determination and hope as she encouraged other sick children to stay brave, to keep fighting, to remember that they were not alone in their struggles. Kate added her own words of support, speaking not as a royal figure, but as someone who had been deeply moved by Emma's courage. Together, they created a message of hope and resilience that would later be viewed by millions of people around the world, inspiring countless individuals who were facing their own health challenges. The video was unscripted and authentic, capturing the genuine connection that had developed between these two very different people who had found common ground in their shared commitment to courage and compassion. Emma's natural charisma and Kate's warm sincerity combined to create something truly special. As the afternoon turned into evening, the reality that this magical visit would eventually have to end began to settle over everyone in the room. Emma, who had been fighting fatigue throughout the day, was beginning to show signs of exhaustion despite her determination to make every moment count. Sarah, who had been watching her daughter experience the greatest joy of her young life, began to feel the approaching sadness of having to say goodbye to the people who had brought such light into Emma's world. She knew that this day would live forever in her memory, regardless of what the future might bring. William and Kate, meanwhile, were grappling with their own emotions about leaving Emma. They had arrived at the hospital expecting to provide comfort to a sick child, but they were leaving having received something far more valuable in return. Emma had reminded them of what truly mattered in life, of the power of courage, and hope to transform even the darkest situations. The gifts that had been exchanged during the visit were meaningful, but the real treasure was the connection that had been formed between these four people. Emma had gained heroes who truly cared about her well-being. Sarah had found allies who understood the challenges she faced as a parent. William and Kate had discovered a family that embodied the best of human nature. As the visit approached its end, Kate made one final gesture that would be remembered long after the formal visits and public appearances were forgotten. She gently tucked Emma into her bed, adjusting the blankets and making sure the little girl was comfortable. Then, just as any loving parent might do, she leaned down and placed a soft kiss on Emma's forehead. "Sweet dreams, my brave friend," Kate whispered. "Remember that you are loved, and remember that courage isn't about not being scared. Courage is about being scared and choosing to keep going anyway. You're the bravest person I know." Emma smiled up at Kate, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, but filled with contentment. "Thank you for being my friend, Princess Kate. Today was the best day of my whole life." Those words would echo in Kate's mind for years to come, a reminder of the profound impact that simple acts of kindness and compassion can have on others. As she and William prepared to leave the hospital, they both knew that they had been changed by this experience, that Emma and Sarah had taught them something important about the true meaning of nobility and grace. The days following the royal visit brought an unexpected transformation to Manchester Children's Hospital. Word of what had happened in Emma's room had spread far beyond the hospital walls, touching hearts across the country and around the world. The simple act of compassion shown by William and Kate had created ripples that reached places none of them could have imagined. Emma herself seemed to draw renewed strength from the visit. Dr. Harrison observed with cautious optimism that his young patient was showing signs of improvement that couldn't be explained purely by medical intervention. Emma was eating better, sleeping more peacefully, and showing an energy level that had been absent for weeks. While he knew that her underlying condition remained critical, the doctor couldn't deny that something profound had shifted in Emma's overall well-being. Sarah noticed the change immediately. Her daughter, who had been growing increasingly withdrawn and listless, was now talking animatedly about her visit with William and Kate. Emma wore her new bracelet constantly, turning the horse charm between her fingers whenever she felt scared or uncomfortable. She had asked the nurses to help her frame the photograph that Kate had signed for her, and it now occupied a place of honor on her bedside table. The video message that Emma and Kate had recorded together was released by the palace 3 days after the visit. Within hours of being posted online, it had been viewed millions of times. The authentic emotion and genuine connection between the princess and the young cancer patient resonated with people across the globe. Comments poured in from other childhood cancer survivors, parents facing similar challenges, and ordinary individuals who were simply moved by the display of courage and compassion. Among those watching the video was Dr. Amanda Foster, a leading pediatric oncologist at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Dr. Foster had spent her career treating young cancer patients and had often struggled with the emotional toll of watching children face such adult challenges. Emma's brave words in the video, combined with Kate's supportive presence, reminded her why she had chosen this difficult but important field of medicine. Dr. Foster immediately reached out to Dr. Harrison in Manchester, beginning a conversation that would lead to a new international collaboration focused on providing emotional support resources for pediatric cancer patients. The two doctors recognized that Emma's story had highlighted the crucial role that hope and emotional well-being played in patient outcomes, and they wanted to develop programs that could systematically provide these benefits to other children. Meanwhile, the response to Emma's story was generating action on multiple fronts. William had been deeply affected by his conversations with Sarah about the practical challenges facing families dealing with childhood cancer. Within a week of the hospital visit, he had directed his staff to begin researching the establishment of a new charitable foundation focused specifically on supporting these families. The proposed foundation would address the gaps that William had learned about during his visit with Emma and Sarah. It would provide financial assistance for families who lost income due to caring for sick children, offer transportation and accommodation support for those who had to travel long distances for treatment, and create respite care programs to give parents brief breaks from the intense demands of caring for seriously ill children. Kate, inspired by her connection with Emma, began exploring ways to expand programs that brought joy and hope to hospitalized children. She had been moved by the transformation she witnessed in Emma during their visit, and she wanted to find ways to replicate that experience for other young patients who might benefit from special attention and encouragement. The princess began reaching out to children's hospitals across the country, not for formal royal visits, but for more intimate encounters similar to what had happened with Emma. She wanted to establish a network of support that could provide personalized attention to children who were facing particularly difficult battles with serious illnesses. Back in Manchester, the impact of the royal visit was being felt throughout the entire hospital community. Other patients and families have been inspired by Emma's courage and by the compassion shown by William and Kate. The children's ward had become a more hopeful place, with patients and staff alike carrying themselves with renewed optimism. Emma had become something of a celebrity within the hospital, but she wore her newfound fame with grace and humility that impressed everyone who met her. Other young patients sought her out for advice and encouragement, and Emma seemed to thrive in her role as an informal mentor and support person. Despite her own serious condition, she spent much of her energy trying to help other children feel better about their own situations. The Teenage Cancer Ward had started a weekly support group inspired by Emma's example. Led by a social worker, but driven by the patients themselves, the group focused on sharing stories of courage, discussing fears and hopes, and supporting each other through the challenges of treatment. Many of the participants credited Emma's video message with giving them the courage to be more open about their experiences and more committed to helping others. One particularly meaningful development came from an unexpected source. Michael Roberts, a successful businessman whose own daughter had battled leukemia 5 years earlier, saw Emma's story on the news and was immediately transported back to his family's own difficult journey. His daughter had survived and was now a healthy 13-year-old, but he had never forgotten the fear, isolation, and financial stress that had accompanied her treatment. Michael reached out to the hospital and offered to establish a fund specifically to support families like Emma's. The Michael Roberts Family Support Fund would provide immediate financial assistance to parents who had to take extended time off work to care for sick children, helping to alleviate one of the major stressors that complicated an already difficult situation. The fund's first recipient was Sarah Mitchell. When Dr. Harrison told her about the anonymous donation that would cover her living expenses for the next 6 months, Sarah broke down in tears. The financial pressure that had been weighing on her since Emma's diagnosis was suddenly lifted, allowing her to focus entirely on her daughter's care without worrying about bills and basic necessities. Emma's story had also caught the attention of the international medical community. Dr. Rachel Chun, a researcher at Harvard Medical School who specialized in the psychological aspects of pediatric cancer treatment, had been following the story with professional interest. She recognized in Emma's experience a powerful example of how emotional support and positive experiences could impact patient outcomes. Dr. Chun contacted Dr. Harrison about the possibility of including Emma's case in a broader research study she was conducting on the role of hope and positive emotional experiences in pediatric cancer treatment. While Emma's prognosis remained uncertain, her response to the royal visit provided valuable data about how psychological factors could influence physical well-being in seriously ill children. The research implications of Emma's story extended beyond individual patient care to broader questions about how healthcare systems could better support the emotional needs of young patients. Dr. Chin's preliminary findings suggested that structured programs providing positive experiences and emotional support could lead to measurable improvements in patient outcomes, including better treatment compliance, reduced anxiety, and, in some cases, enhanced immune system response. Meanwhile, the public response to Emma's story continued to grow. Schools across the country began organizing fundraising events in Emma's honor, with children her age showing remarkable creativity in finding ways to help other young cancer patients. One primary school in London organized a sponsored readathon, raising thousands of pounds while also promoting the joy of reading that Emma had shared with Kate during their visit. The response wasn't limited to the United Kingdom. Emma's video message had been translated into multiple languages and was being shared by childhood cancer support organizations worldwide. Parents in countries as diverse as Australia, Canada, and Japan were using Emma's words to encourage their own children who were facing similar battles. A particularly moving response came from the Children's Hospital in Toronto, where a group of young cancer patients created their own video message in response to Emma's, led by 10-year-old David Park, who had been receiving treatment for a brain tumor. The children spoke directly to Emma, telling her how her courage had inspired them and sharing their own messages of hope and determination. When Dr. Harrison showed Emma the video from Toronto, her reaction was immediate and profound. Despite her own illness and fatigue, Emma was energized by the knowledge that her words had helped other children feel braver and more hopeful. She insisted on creating a response video, working with the hospital's media team to record a personal message for each of the children in Toronto. This exchange sparked a broader movement of children in hospitals around the world creating video messages of support for each other. What became known as the Emma Network grew into an informal international system of mutual support among young cancer patients, facilitated by child life specialists and social workers in participating hospitals. The network provided children with a sense of connection and community that extended far beyond their immediate hospital environment. Many participants found that helping to encourage other children actually improved their own emotional well-being and resilience. The peer support model that emerged from Emma's initial courage became a new therapeutic tool, being studied and implemented in pediatric oncology programs worldwide. Back at Kensington Palace, William and Kate were grappling with their own transformation in the wake of their visit to Emma. Both had been deeply affected by the experience, but they were also aware that their emotional response needed to be channeled into meaningful action rather than simply sentiment. William had commissioned a comprehensive study of support services for families dealing with childhood cancer, with the goal of identifying gaps and opportunities for improvement. The research revealed significant disparities in available support, particularly for families in rural areas or those without strong social networks. The findings reinforced William's determination to establish a new foundation that could provide practical, immediate assistance to families in crisis. He envisioned a program that could respond quickly to urgent needs, providing everything from emergency financial assistance to transportation and accommodation support for families traveling for specialized treatment. Kate, meanwhile, had been working with her staff to develop a more systematic approach to providing emotional support for hospitalized children. Her experience with Emma had shown her the powerful impact that personal attention and genuine connection could have on a child's emotional state and overall well-being. The princess was exploring the possibility of training a network of volunteers who could provide one-on-one support to children in hospitals across the country. These volunteers would be carefully selected and trained to provide the kind of meaningful interaction that had proven so beneficial for Emma, creating a sustainable program that could reach many more children than Kate could visit personally. As the weeks passed since the royal visit, Emma's condition remained fragile, but her spirits stayed remarkably high. She had become a source of inspiration not just for other patients, but for the medical staff who cared for her. Nurses and doctors found themselves approaching their work with renewed purpose, reminded by Emma's example of why their profession was so important. The transformation in hospital culture was particularly evident during the weekly rounds led by Dr. Harrison, where these meetings had once focused primarily on medical data and treatment protocols. They now included regular discussions about patients' emotional well-being and the various ways that staff could contribute to creating a more hopeful environment. Emma's influence extended to hospital policies as well. The administration had implemented new guidelines allowing for more flexible visiting hours and family involvement in patient care, recognizing that emotional support was a crucial component of treatment. The success of Emma's story had demonstrated that compassionate care could be just as important as medical intervention in determining patient outcomes. The changes at Manchester Children's Hospital were being studied and replicated at other medical facilities around the country. Hospital administrators and medical professionals were recognizing that Emma's experience represented more than just a heartwarming story. It provided a model for how healthcare institutions could better serve the complete needs of their patients and families. Dr. Sarah Williams, a healthcare policy researcher at Oxford University, had been following the developments at Manchester with keen interest. Her preliminary analysis suggested that the cultural changes inspired by Emma's story had led to measurable improvements in patient satisfaction, family stress levels, and even some clinical outcomes. She was working to establish a formal research partnership with the hospital to document and analyze these improvements more systematically. The research had implications far beyond childhood cancer care. Dr. Williams believed that Emma's story demonstrated principles of compassionate care that could benefit patients across all medical specialties and age groups. The emphasis on emotional support, family involvement, and hope as components of treatment could revolutionize how healthcare was delivered in many different contexts.